Hello, 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 greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of greeting across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my wonderful, dear, amazing, glorious, very special scholars. Hello, hello, hello. Congratulations on getting first apps. I believe this is your very first time getting first. Huh. Never realized how redundant that would sound. But congratulations! Hello there, and also welcome, Abs. Welcome. Hello there, Firefly. Welcome. Hello there, Lady Yumi. Welcome. Good to see you. It's been a while. Hello there, FT Wastes. Welcome. Hello there, Julian20. Welcome. It's my first. Oh my goodness. Well, congratulations on getting your first. I mean, every person should get their first at some first time. First. So how are all you marvelous, wonderful, glorious, etc., scholars doing this fine evening, afternoon, or morning, or whatever time zone you happen to exist in at this very moment? I don't know. I can't tell. Julian20, not the greatest, but doing my best. I'm sorry to hear that. FT Wastes. First, she says, getting first repeatedly in my streams. Firefly, I'm decorating cookies. Oh, wonderful, marvelous. It is the season to decorate cookies. Abs, pretty good. Good to hear that you're pretty good. Pretty good is good. First. Everything's redundant tonight. As for me, it's been alright. Things are going alright. Virgil and Ovid are somewhere. I don't know. I don't really worry about Ovid, but Virgil, whenever Virgil's away, it always makes me a little nervous because I don't know what he's gonna get up to. I just know that it's gonna be trouble. Julian20, I've not started cookie baking. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I'm sure you'll get a chance to do so. There's plenty of time. I mean, there's only a few days, but there's still plenty of time. It still counts. Ah, Kinchon, Virgil causing trouble? Nah. Yeah, really. I mean, Virgil just spells trouble whenever they're around. Mm. But I digress. Yes, Horace and I have been doing pretty well. It's been one of those days. Nothing really special happening, nothing really special going on, nothing really bad happening. It's just been a day. But today, as many of you already know, is a reading day. Yes, we are going to be reading more of John Macefield's The Midnight Folk. Um, I will say, having read it last time, um, it is interesting to read something without any chapter breaks. It feels really strange. I don't know if any of you have ever read a book without chapter breaks, but it's hard to get a grasp on the pacing when there is no, uphill action, downhill action leading to the end of a chapter. It feels weird. FT Waste, oh yes, it's very strange. Union20, you seem to do well. Well, yes, but I can tell you behind the scenes, it was kind of a struggle, honestly. It was kind of a struggle to read it. You don't feel the crescendo of the events leading to a certain point because it is just kind of flowing through the entire story. So there is nothing to really warn you about, like oh, this is the point where this goes up in action. No, this is the point where this goes down in action. It doesn't go that way. FT Waste, The Collector is a book like that. Ooh, interesting. I've never heard of The Collector. I don't think I've heard of that one. Abs, I usually read pretty well paced books. Good, good. This is the first time I've ever tried reading a book where there is really no chapter breaks, and again, it's just like it's a surreal feeling. But as I said before, I digress. So for those who are just coming in and didn't come for the last stream, I will do a quick summary of events happening so far. This book concerns young Kay Harker, a young British boy who has been tasked by his guardian to find the treasure that his grandfather supposedly stole and buried somewhere nearby. Um, Kay has discovered that there were a group of guardians who were tasked with finding the treasure. And with the help of Nibbins, who is a former witch's cat, he's also discovered, as I mentioned just now, which rooted, there is a coven of witches who is also after the treasure, led by the mysterious and sinister Abner Brown. I think that pretty well covers it. So, one second. Oh, there's dryer everywhere. Oh my goodness. Ah, dry air everywhere in this study. I need to get some kind of humidifier for this place. So, my dear marvelous scholars, are you ready for us to dive well back into the Midnight Folk? And we're actually going to start at a very strange place in the book. Julian 20. Oh, I so need this. Oh, good, good. Oh, drop something. There we are. Well then, my dear scholars, sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage of your liking, and let us begin once again. John Masefield's The Midnight Folk. Oh, and thank you for the hydrate ward, Dud, and welcome. Good to see you. FT Waste Abner? I hardly knew her. Even if that wasn't a pun, that is a terrible joke, FT Waste. You should be ashamed of yourself. Excuse Ellen came in. "If you please, Mom," Ellen said, "would you mind speaking to Jane?" Jane was at the door behind her. "If you please, Mom," Jane said, "would you please to look at this?" This was the dish on which the cold goose had lain. But, alas, now nothing remained but a few picked bones and a skeleton almost bare. "The cats have been in again, Mum. I don't know how they get in, and the chain's gone the same way, and there's 2 more brooms gone." "Did you lock the ladder door, Jane?" "Yes, Mum, and I took the key and had it under my pillow. And if it isn't the cats, and I don't know how cats get in, then somebody must have a key and come in the night, and I don't like it." "I'll look into this after breakfast, Jane," the governess said, "and I'll speak to Wiggins." Kay stared at the bones of the goose. He knew how that goose and chain had disappeared. Almost immediately Jane reappeared. "If you please, Mum, Wiggins has found the 2 brooms, the besom and the broom. They were in the road outside, near the spring." "Well, how on earth could they have got there?" the governess said. "I don't know how they got there," Jane said, "but I don't like it." The governess did not talk during breakfast, but seemed to be considering the question of the brooms and the goose. Kay's thoughts were far away with Nibbins, Mr. Bigham, and that gathering of witches on the hill. "Of all the dreamy boys," the governess said suddenly, "going off into daydreams, it's my belief that you need a dose. It's my belief you eat too much. You'll put on your boots before you come to lessons, and ask Ellen to dry those shoes in the oven." "Please come." I'm going to try and do Kay's voice somehow. It's hard to do little kids' voices. Please, can't I wear my slippers during lessons? No, you won't wear your slippers during lessons. For one thing, they're not dry, and you'll catch your death wearing them. 1 second, my dear scholars. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. Dry air does make one sneeze. And I would rather you didn't hear me sneeze. A Matsu sneeze, it may drive you mad. And that's something I don't want you scholars to experience. And for another, you fidget me distracted by rubbing one slipper off and then the other, just as though you were playing a game with them. Is it explosive? Only mentally, not in the physical sense. This was a cool thrust, because Kay did play games with them. When he had scraped off a slipper, he could push it about with his toes, and imagine that it was a canoe full of, I'll have to say this word, I'm sorry, redskins on the warpath, going down the rapids, or a diving bell at Tobermory, bringing up treasure from one of the ships of the Armada, or great-grandpapa Harker's ship, the Plunderer, engaging 7 French privateers, or that famous horse lottery at various stages of the steeplechase, the prince of which hung in the study. But the boots were laced up things that gave no solace. There they were, and there you were. The governess stalked out of the room to investigate the larder door. Ellen came in to clear away. Kay looked up at the portrait of great-grandmama Siskin. Sorry. Her eyes seemed all right. This is the loveliest time that I've ever had, Kay thought, and anything may happen. He walked slowly round the room, tapping the paneling. What are you doing, Master Kay? Ellen asked. I was just seeing if there were any secret passages, he said. Oh, there's no secret passages in here, Master Kay. What should there be secret passages for? Oh, Kay said, when people were doing murders, they always used to have them, and then smugglers had them. The smugglers were never here, Ellen said. Not in this house. Down by the river the smugglers were, so my father said. They had the mill at 7 Hatches. Oh, and by Drowned Man's Corpse, why, they'd a place. At the Springs another. But they never could have come here. Your great-grandfather would never have allowed them. No, Kay said, but he would never have known. They could have crept in at night and made the passages. I don't think they could, Master Kay. Not in stone walls. After he had put on his boots, Kay went out among the Laristians. Larusnus. Larusnus? Larusnus. Not sure what that means, but okay, I'm guessing it's some kind of plant. To look for that secret place where the trap door had opened beneath his feet. 10 o'clock struck while he was still searching, but by great good fortune he got to the schoolroom before the governess arrived. It was French morning. He struggled through an exercise in Ollendorf, and a little translation from Chardonnel. Unfortunately, the governess would not let him translate what had seemed, at private readings, a very promising passage about an axe and skull, with a war cry of Hallelujah. She said that it was not fit for a little boy to read. Then came the dreaded moment. And now, Kay, since you were a very naughty little boy last night, and were most disobedient and dreamy this morning, you will learn Poivre, while I go to look at the larder again, now that Wiggins is there. What do you think it was that did it in the larder? He asked. You learn your lessons, she said. Never mind what I think it was. She left him with Poivre. Kay had a special prejudice against Poivre. It was a mean and ugly word, which went into pu, pew and poo. It didn't seem to have any sense in it. He wrestled with it with each boot twisted round a leg of his chair, scraping up and down. Then, looking up, he saw great grandpapa Harker, looking down at him from his portrait over the mantelpiece. The portrait was one that he had looked at during lessons ever since lessons began. It was just great grandpapa Harker's portrait, though it was labeled Baxter. When people were shown the schoolroom, the governess always said, "That is a Baxter," and then people said, "Really?" or "Fancy that," or "How interesting." It was a full-length portrait of a man in old-fashioned clothes. There was a sort of shrubbery behind him and a sort of blueness behind the shrubbery. It was said to be the only full-length Baxter, as generally Baxter only did down to the knees. But now as Kay looked, great-grandpapa Harker distinctly took a step forward, and as he did so, the wind ruffled the skirt of his coat and shook the shrubs behind him. A couple of blue butterflies, which had been upon the shrubs for 70-odd years, flew out into the room. Great-grandpapa Harker took another step forward and smiled. Now Kay could see into the shrubbery. It was just where Kay's fort now was, but the box trees had grown enormously since then, although the blue finches were already there. Where am I? Oh, there I am. Great-grandpapa Harker held out his hand and smiled again. His face, which had seemed such an old portrait kind of a face, became alive and full of welcome. He seemed a fine fellow, not at all old, and very kind and good. "Well, great-grandson Kay," he said, "ne pouvez-vous pas come into the jardin avec moi?" I will make no excuses. I am horrible at pronouncing French. I apologize. Kay thought it odd, but it was a perfect excuse for not doing poivoir. "I would have learned it, but great-grandpapa Harker asked me to come into the jardin avec him, so of course I thought you couldn't mind." He smiled back at great-grandpapa Harker and said, "Oui, Grand-Grand-Pierre, thank you. Je serai very glad." Great-grandpapa Harker held out both hands, and Kay jumped onto the table, and from there, with a step of run, he leapt onto the top of the fender and caught the mantelpiece. Great-grandpapa Harker caught him and helped him up into the picture. Instantly the schoolroom disappeared. Kay was out of doors, standing beside his great-grandfather, looking at the house as it was in the pencil drawing in the study, with cows in the field close to the house on what was now the lawn, the church unchanged beyond, and nearby some standard yellow roses, long since vanished, but now seemingly in full bloom. Kay did not know quite what to say, so he said, "Did the cows really come so close to the house?" "Yes, indeed. That is Sweetlips. That one is Rosemary. And the brindle is Colinette." Kay was looking at the cows, who were all in the rich grass, grazing and swishing away the flies. An amiable-looking man with a fat, pale face and a sun hat and big green spectacles rose up from behind an easel among the roses. "That will be all that I can do for you for today, Harker," he said as he packed his things. "Come to think of it, you're the first full length I've done." Kay knew somehow that this was Baxter. He watched him move off across the grass to the gate, which was not a drive gate as now, but a farm field gate, overshadowed by trees long since cut down. Kay was alone with Great-Grandpapa Harker in a place that was his home, but yet strangely different. So much of it was not there at all, not yet built. "Is this all the house?" he asked. "Yes, come in, great-grandson, and see it." I kind of like this. This is so magical, and it's if you've ever read or seen Box of Delights, you can see John Masefield does continue this sort of almost dreamlike magic in it. It's very, and I hate using this term. It's very much magic you'd see in like what they call magical realism nowadays. Which I'm not a fan of as a term. Admittedly, I think it's honestly kind of a lazy excuse to not have to call something fantasy. But it's that sort of thing. It's really interesting. He led the way along a cobblestone path to a door, somewhere near where the dining room door is, as Kay thought. Excuse me. Pear trees grew up the house here. The porch was supported by the snouts of two carven wooden dolphins, standing on their tails. "I brought those from Santa Ustari," Great-Grandpapa Harker said. "They came off the stern of a Dutch ship that was wrecked there in the great storm of 1782, the year I was born. They must have blunted some chisels to carve them. Feel how tough the wood is." Kay felt the hard dark wood, as close-grained as African oak. Great-Grandpapa Harker opened the door into a long, rather dark-paneled room, now completely gone. There were some portraits on the wall. The man in the blue coat and white stockings, now in the best bedroom. The man in the long brown coat with the red belt, now in the hall. And the lady that looked so like a camel. That's got to be an interesting description. As they entered, a white cockatoo, which had been sitting quietly upon her perch, rose in excitement with an open bill. An old lady was asleep in a chair. Something told Kay that when she had been younger, she had looked like a camel. Again, what does that exactly mean, looks like a camel? I mean, what how does she look like a camel? The only other things that Kay recognized were the arms in colored glass. These were in a window, whereas Kay saw them daily now in the fan light of a door. 3 Oreilles, couped, for Harker, 2 Siskins proper, for Siskin, 7 Abelles, Grumleys, or for Calway, and 3 Alms Spritly, for Meand. Interesting. Great-Grandpapa Harker led the way out of the dining room, which was dark, into the study, which was still darker. Too dark, as Kay thought, for anybody to read in comfort in it. It was paneled up to the ceiling and lined with books, nearly all of them little volumes bound in calfskin. They had been arranged according to size. He's arranging the books according to size? I mean, I know you can arrange books in many different ways, but according to size, I think that would be a little bit, how do I put it, a little bit messy. When he looked round, having entered the room, he found that there were folios behind him. "You see, great-grandson," he said, "these books are not really books, but a shutter." He moved something in the wall, and a shelf of books swung away and let in a flood of light. Over the mantel was the portrait of the man in the puce coat, who was now in the hall. There was a blunderbuss up in one corner, wired to some nails, and an old harpsichord, which was now up in the box room with so many other mouldering wrecks. "Now, my little great-grandson," Great-Grandpapa Harker said, "let me look at you, and talk with you. Do they still think that I stole the treasure?" "I'm sure you didn't," Kay said. "Many thought that I did, that I hid it somewhere, perhaps in the floor above this room. For years I had letters from people who dared not sign their names, accusing me of stealing it. I lost it. It was trusted to me, and I lost it. And what became of it no one knows, though I think it must be sunk or scattered. A black cat with white throat and paws, which have been ashes for 40 years, rubbed up against Great-Grandpapa Harker's legs, and then, springing on the arm of his chair, watched the long-dead sparrows in the plum tree which had been firewood a quarter of a century ago. "You ought to know about the treasure, Kay," Great-Grandpapa Harker said, "for until it is restored or traced, no man of our name ought to rest. Your grandfather would not move in the matter. Your father could not. There is only you." "I'd love to hear all about it, if you'd tell me, Kay said. "It was in the year 1811, Captain Harker began. "I was then in the Plunderer, West Indiaman, which I commanded and partially owned, in the port of Santa Barbara, loading sugar. Loading sugar. War was raging all over the world. We in the Plunderer were very short-handed. The admiral on the station had impressed all our best men, and we had lost some by fever. We had a crew of 21 all told, to load, sail, and defend the ship, and of all of them only Hollins, my mate, was a man to trust in trouble. Nearly all the South American states were then breaking loose from Spain. A revolution broke out in Santa Barbara. The rebels marched upon the capital, which had only 100 soldiers in the garrison. The people expected the city to be sacked. And we got a little illustration in this book of two ships firing on each other. The archbishop with his priors came off to the Plunderer to ask me if they might lodge the treasures of the churches on board my ship for safety. I said that I had a very weak crew, that I was in an undefended port, and that French privateers were known to be on the coast. They said that as the rebels were in sight, they had no other chance of saving the things. So at this I consented. Oh boy, this is a long part. They brought it aboard at once, and I had it stricken down into the afterhold. It consisted of church ornaments, images, lamps, candlesticks, reliquaries, chalices, and crosses of gold, silver, and precious stones. Most of it was packed in grass matting, but in the hurry some was bare. I had never seen such wealth. Certainly my crew never had. In a way I saved it, for 2 hours later the rebels entered the city and sacked every church within the walls. Then my troubles began, but not from the rebels. 7 ships were seen approaching the port. From the whiteness of their sails I judged them to be French. Hollins, my man, agreed with me. Roper Bilges, my gunner, a drunken and careless man, thought that they were Brazilians. Twinny Pricker, my sailmaker, a sinister person, with a great deal in him, said that they were French privateers. I gave the word to lower the boats and tow the ship out to sea, there being them a dead calm in the shore. By the time that we were clear of the headland, the squadron was within shot. There were 4 French corvettes, 2 brigs, and a schooner, all full of men and well armed. In the first shots exchanged between us, they wounded poor Hollins. They continued in chase till dark, driving us to the westward, but not gaining on us. So we've turned into a pirate story apparently now. I was more than anxious, having now only 18 unwounded men on board, to sail the ship and defend this great wealth. After seeking guidance, I determined to make for our naval station at Puerto Riquef. Not sure what that is. To hand over the treasure to the British admiral commanding there, and ask him to return it in a ship of war when the civil troubles had ceased. FT Waste, The Midnight Pirates has a different ring to it. Actually, that sounds like a great title. I'd be interested in reading a book like that. Well, we are reading a book like that, but it would be interesting to read a book titled that. Having set down this determination in writing, I read it to poor Hollins, to the gunner Roper Bilges, and to the sailmaker, who all approved it. Going on deck, I read it to the ship's company. It was then dark, but the enemy's ship's signals were still visible astern, perhaps 2 miles away. The wind was freshening from the north, which made the land a lee coast to us. Our rigging had been somewhat cut by shot, and with poor Hollins dying, the enemy near, the rocks close, night upon us, 2 wounded men to dress, and the whole navigation of the ship depending on me, I had my hands full. I have blamed myself bitterly for being taken unawares. I had no thought that what afterwards happened would occur. Poor Hollins died at midnight. With the wind freshening, I could not be present to minister to him. I stayed on deck till about 3 o'clock in the morning, when it was light enough to see the enemy ships far astern. That danger being past for the moment, and the ship holding her course well, I left the deck in charge of the sailmaker, intending to lie down in my clothes for an hour. I was gravely uneasy at my position, but did not doubt that I had decided rightly, both in receiving the treasure on board and in making for our squadron at Porto Rico. I had not been long asleep when I was awakened by Roper Bilges bursting into my cabin with some of the crew, who seized me and bound me, threatening to kill me with their pistols, etc., and saying that the ship was now theirs. On my trying to reason with them, they put a gag in my mouth, and gave 3 cheers for Roper Bilges and the bishop's treasure. And there's a little illustration here showing that very scene. They said they were now going to be gentlemen, and on the account, that is, pirates. Whether the first thought of this came from Bilges or the sailmaker, I cannot say. Certainly Bilges was now their captain. After 5 days of standing to the west, they put me ashore on the coast 300 miles from any settlement of white man, with no weapon but a knife and no means of livelihood but that and a fishing line, which my seaman had the humanity to slip into my hand. They left me on the coast and sailed away upon a northwesterly course, as though for the Gulf. What became of them, no man knows. I need more hydration because I just realized how long this bit is. Oh my goodness. I never realized how long this part was. I was made a prisoner by the Indians, who took me with them far into the forest, to their camp by the falls. I was with the Indians as a slave for more than 5 years. Being a slave is bad. It makes a man think too much of his own misery. Still in the end I escaped, which few slaves do, and returned to a home of love and beauty, such as few slaves have ever had. I have been given up for dead by many. Some suppose that I had run away with the treasure. Oh, thank you for the follow, Leviathan7476, and welcome! I am Matsu Quinox, interdimensional omniversal librarian. This is Horace, my friend, assistant, and companion, and we are reading The Midnight Folk by John Masefield. I'm a variety streamer. I stream games on Tuesdays, usually, and I do readings on Thursdays, with once in a while I do extra little readings on Fridays and Sundays. Welcome! Glad to have you join our little company of scholars. Excuse me. Excuse me. Dry hair. Now where am I? I gotta get my voice back for this. I am glad to say that the Archbishop, who knew me, never thought that. He had caused the ships of our navy to search for us. The admiral in his report said that the plunderer had left Santa Barbara fighting an enemy squadron, and that although she had not been captured, as the men of the squadron confessed when they were afterwards taken, she had probably received grave injuries and had sunk. When I made the truth known, the members of the crew were described and posted as pirates through the western seaports. I visited all the possible ports myself and sought among the receivers of stolen goods for some trace of the treasure. I searched among hospitals, prisons, hulks, and galleys for some of the crew. I found no trace whatever, nor could I find any ship, lighthouse keeper, or signalman who had seen the plunderer after me. When I saw her heading northwest as though for the Gulf. Oh, thank you for the posture check, Julian20. I am going to need it. Oh. The treasure was trusted to me, my little great-grandson. I cannot tell you how the loss of it weighed upon me. I could not go back to my profession of merchant trader. My remaining days were passed in hunting for clues to it. For months I would say to myself, "No, the plunderer sank with all on board." Then I would read that pirates had been captured in such and such a place, and after that I would know no rest till I had examined the confessions of the crew, what ships they had taken, and whither any could have been the plunderer. Then, after more months of thinking that she had sunk, I would say to myself, "No, Roper Bilges probably sailed her to Europe, to a port of France or Spain. He may now be a great man in either land." When such thoughts came, away I would go for months to either land, or to Holland, or to Denmark, or further still to Italy and the Levant, to ask in the ports, till my heart sickened. I was known in many ports as the mad Englishman. No one had ever seen the plunder except an Italian in Genoa, who had been my steward in her for a year. One of my griefs was this, that my wife and son, your grandfather, longed for me to give up the quest. They were sure that the plunder had sunk, and thought me mad to persist. Another grief was the knowledge that many people here believed that I had run away with the ship, and stolen the treasure. It is said that listeners hear no good of themselves. I sometimes heard people say, "Ah, old Harker, they do say that he was a pirate and ran away with all the cathedral money." Or, "Yes, he says that they took the ship from him with all the treasure on board. I dare say he wasn't very unwilling. Why didn't he shoot them? He had his pistols." Or, "A very likely tale that he was among the Indians for 5 years. Much more likely he was spending the treasure somewhere. Once I heard a man say, 'It's my belief he's got the treasure hidden in the house.' Everybody says so. Besides, if he hasn't, what is it that he's got hidden underneath the hearthstone in his bedroom? My bedroom is now yours, Kay. The room over this." "What is underneath that big hearthstone?" Kay asked. "Underneath that big hearthstone?" Great Grandpapa Harker repeated. "Of course, some say the treasure. Then some think that somebody has been murdered and hidden there." "And what is there?" Kay asked. "Would you like to see, my little great-grandson?" Great Grandpapa Harker answered. "There is not much to see. What is it, Rover?" As he spoke, the door of the library was thrust open. A pointer came shambling, waking, and cringing all at once to his master's feet. The library changed and blurred at his coming. He seemed to have let a lot of light into the room. Indeed, even as Kay looked, it was not a room, but the field where the cows were grazing. But the cows were blurring all together into one. They were, in fact, not cows. They were bushes, browner than bushes ought to be, with a blueness above them which he knew was meant to be the sky. He saw Great-Grandpapa Harker standing there, but something dark and oblong surrounded him and shut him away. "Why, he's gone back into the picture," Kay thought. The glass of the picture shut the old man still further away. The picture was over the mantelpiece, and there was he, Kay, on the other side of the table, bent over the French verb pouvoir. Baxter's portrait of great-grandpapa Harker was staring down, unmoving. The governess entered. "Put away your pouvoir now, Kay," she said. "It's time for writing lessons. Take a piece of paper and write a nice letter to yourself while I do my books." Kay began his letter. "My dear Kay, I hope you are quite well. I hope your friends, the cats, are quite well. I am quite well. Please give my love to Ellen. I hope she is quite well. We have a nice dog here, but he is naughty." He sucked the end of his pen for a long time, but could think of nothing more to say, except that the naughty dog was quite well. "Haven't you finished yet?" the governess said. "How many more times am I to tell you not to suck your pen like that? You are a disobedient child. Let me see what you have written." "Really, Kay," she said, having read the letter, "I forbid you to mention the words 'quite well' in any other letter that you write. You learn a phrase and then repeat it like a little parrot. And then how do you spell naughty? N-A-U-G-H-T spells not. N-A-U-G-H-T-Y spells, what does it spell?" "I don't know quite what it would spell." "Yes, you do, sir. Think. Now, what does it spell?" "Think?" "No, it doesn't spell think. It spells what you are. Naughty. Now, you'll write out N-A-U-G-H-T-Y 25 times. And look at your writing. All sloppy and sliding. You will not put both your fingers on the pen. You'll never see me with my finger under the pen in that way. You'll never be able to write unless you get both your fingers onto the pen. Now, put them on the proper way." Oh, she is really harsh. More hydration. Usually after lessons he played by himself in the garden, in the shrubberies if it were dry, and on the paths if it were wet. Today he went out to the garden, to walk by the brook which ran beside it, to watch the minnows in the shallows, and to see his friend the water rat, coming from his cool swim to nibble a cress. The water was clear with green weeds swaying in it, like fishes' tails. The water rat slid into it with a little fall of earth and swam downstream to his hole. "I do wish I could be a water rat," he thought. He wandered into a lane and then away across the fields to the church, where he found old Bert the sexton going up the tower to wind the clock. "Mr. Bert," he said, "did you ever know my great-grandfather Harker?"
"Well, Mr. Kay, I've known all of you. I've known your father, Mr. Harker, and your grandfather, old Mr. Harker, afore him, and yes, I knew old Mr. Harker. But he was an old man when I came on to be a boy. That is, he wasn't an old man, but he seemed old. And he was old, beside old Mr. Harker."
"Will you tell me about him?"
"Well, I don't know that I can. Let me see now. Old Mr. Harker. He'd been a savage Indian, so they did used to say. Ah, old Mr. Harker. Yes, things were very different in those days. They'd no railways in those days, nothing but the coach up and down. And they'd the old gallows up on the hill. Let me see about old Mr. Harker. Then whether I can tell you anything. He lived where you live, only it wasn't built on till then, the new part. That was your grandfather built that, old Mr. George. I remember old Mr. Harker had a stick he used to walk with, a foreign stick all carved by the savages. I used to say he had a lot of foreign treasure all buried away, all gold and that, but I'll never believe that, for my father once heard him say to old Mr. Robert that used to live in the Dingles' old place, but they made him bishop after. Robert, he said, if I could only find that treasure, it would be a load off my mind. So I never believed he had the treasure. But about him, Master Kay, I used to see him stumping about with his stick. He had the rheumatic complaint from being wet through so often. He gave me some of these foreign fruits once, done up in sugar, because I took a letter for him. They did say he ought to have died when he did. He ought to have died when he did, for he wasn't what you would call old. But they did used to say he had something on his mind, if you understand me. He had his tomb done out very pretty in the south aisle, though it seems old-fashioned now. There it is by the pew where they penguins sit, just this side of where they put your grandfather.
Kay stood upon the stone which covered great-grandpapa Harker. On the wall above the pews near it was a memorial tablet carved with a small lady in high-relief mourning, besides a very big urn. A ship showed in the distance, part of an anchor stuck out of the urn. Underneath the design was an inscription. Beside this stone lie the mortal remains of Aston Terald Harker, son of Charles Terald Harker, Esquire, late of Seeking's house, in this parish, born 17 August 1782, died 13th January 1850. He was constant in affection, spotless in ingenuity, a useful magistrate, eminent in his calling, manly in fortitude, womanly in tenderness. Huh. He combined the graces of a scholar with the virtues of a good citizen. Reader, canst thou say as much? If not, forbear to judge. This stone was erected 1850 by his sorrowing widow, Jemima Siskin Harker, eldest daughter of Sir Brambling Siskin of Siskin Hall, whom he married in 1811. A stone to Jemima Siskin Harker, erected by her sorrowing son, George Terald Siskin Harker, lay a little to the east of this tablet on the same south wall. Kay spent some few minutes looking at these and other tablets in the aisle. He then tried to make out the subject of a stained glass window, which he had puzzled over at a distance during many a dreary sermon. He could not get it clear. There were bits of heads, glories, horses, and old writing. What he had decided was a yellow half-lop rabbit seemed to be a hat with spikes. This was a blow, for the rabbit, named Bunkin, had beguiled even the litany. "Mr. Burt," he said, "could you tell me the name of the gamekeeper who looks after the Coneycop spinney?"
Why, yes, the sexton said. That's the squire's comfort. His keeper lives by they pine trees, out by Rye Meadows. Roper Bilges is his name, and Bilges is his nature, they do say.
"Roper Bilges!" Kay cried. "Roper Bilges! Were his ancestors gunners?"
No, Bert answered. Not so far as I know, unless shotgunners.
"Did they come from these parts, do you know?"
No, they came from up Salop way, somewhere, not so long since. That Roper's brother is footman to Sir Hassel."
"Were there ever many smugglers here when you were a boy, Mr. Burt?"
Kay asked. Oh, you mean what they used to call the Nighthawks. Why, no, those were done before I began. They took to killing people. No, but there was something that like them going on, bringing brandy and tea and that, not so very many years ago. I knew some who were concerned in it, though it's best not to speak of it. Only it was a blessing to poor folk in those dear times. Dreadful the prices were.
I think I'm slipping into a different accent, my dear scholars. I apologize.
I don't know who the head of it was, except that he was a gentleman, and he worked it very carefully. No one quite knew how. No, they never caught him, but it came to an end.
Was there anyone called Brown or Trigger doing it? Do you know?
Kay asked.
Mr. Bert's face changed at the two names. He looked hard at Kay.
The name I always heard tell was Mr. Galloway, he said, but it may not have been his real name.
I suppose all the things were brought up the river?
Yes, all these fellows, the Night Hawks as well, brought their things up the river. And a very queer thing, now that we're talking of this, was what happened at the time of the great flood. There were some barges that had come up with corn to the old mill, that was. He's gone now, but you can see where the wheels used to be. Condicut Old Mill, they called it. A very big mill he used to be. You'll have been to the place.
Condicut. They mentioned Condicut in oh. Oh, wait. They mentioned Condicut in what's it called? Box of Delights, and I almost forgot Condicut is where this takes place. It's a specific area in England. I almost forgot that. Silly me.
Yes, Kay said. I went there to a picnic once, and afterwards we all fished, but never caught anything. Well, that's where Condicut Old Mill was, Mr. Bird said. And about these barges, what that had come up, they'd come to what they called the wharf, just below the lock, in very rough, rainy weather. You remember the wharf, maybe? It is just at the mill. Then there came the great flood, when all those barges was washed away and stove in about Cold Comfort Bridge. My father was a carpenter and builder, and all's the barges were stove he offered for the wood to break up the wrecks and carry them away. Now, when he came to break up those barges, he found that every one had a false bottom. There was a secret place in each one, where quite a lot of things could be put, and in two of them he found packs of tobacco. Only the flood had got at it. So that shows you, doesn't it, how the stuff came and where it came to? My father never mentioned it to people, but it was queer, come to think of it, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed, Kay said. And do you remember the Great Flood?
Why, yes, Master Kay, no people who saw it will forget it. There was a week of storm in January after a very wet season. Oh, dreadful it had been, with the corn all lying out as late as October, all sprouting in the stooks. Then in this week it rained very hard, and the river rose. And then at full moon the spring tides came up, and stopped the head of water from getting out. So it was like a sea all the way from Upwaters to Seven Hatches and beyond. Bridges broken, all except the old one. Cows, pigs, and sheep carried away. No getting across the river anywhere for days and days. And the weirs, oh, they were terrible. They would turn a man's mind to look at them. With all bits of cow-briars, haystacks, pig-troughs, trees, hen-coops, bee-skeps, everything just going tumbling down. I saw a cradle go over at Condicut Old Mill, and if there had been even twins in it, no man could have saved them. And nearly all the boats were gone too. It was all like a big sea as far as one could see, with hedges and trees standing out of it, and sometimes a sort of island, with a few cows on it to moo in to be milked, poor things, or a poor horse running round half starved.
Need another drink. He's a little bit hard to do. Did you ever hear of a Mr. Brown who was drowned in the flood?
Again, Mr. Bert's face changed. "You mentioned that name before," he said, "as well as another name. There was a lot of talk about those two. That Sir Trigger, for he was a sir, murdered Mr. Brown and flung him in the water, and then fled."
Do you think he did?
Kay asked. "No, Master Kay, I don't. It's my belief that they both fell into the flood at Condicant Old Mill and were drowned. Only the Sir Trigger was washed into a mudbank and buried, whereas Mr. Brown was carried to Seven Hatches and found. 3 or 4 people disappeared in the flood and were never heard of again. I believe Sir Trigger was one of them. If not, Master Kay, I would say that it was the other way about, that the brown man murdered him and was drowned while escaping."
What makes you think that, Mr. Bert?
"It's a long while ago," Mr. Burt said, "and everybody concerned is dead. But that pimply Watto's father, who was a bad one, when he was dying, told my father that on the last night those two were seen. He saw them both at the Ring of Bells, so as to know them. And at midnight that night he saw them both again, near the mill, and the brown man was threatening the trigger man, saying, 'I've warned you twice, you'll get no third time.' And the trigger man said, 'If I lay hands on you again, I'll mark you. Get out!' And the brown man did get out. But when the trigger man moved on, Watto saw the brown man creep after him and take out a pistol. No man ever saw them ever again alive. They both went on towards the flood. Watto never came forward with his story at the inquiry, because he was afraid he might be charged with murdering them himself. Besides, he wasn't there himself for any good, you may be sure. And maybe his story isn't true, for he wasn't always quite the one for the truth. It's best to give them both the benefit. The great flood was more than enough to drown them, without either of them doing murder. Still, that was the tale he told." Excuse me. "They put a tablet that Brown in Little Zenon Church, if ever you go there, to the memory of Abner Brown, Esquire, a stranger, a victim of the great flood. But there, I'm rambling on past dinner time." He had moved away after dusting the knees of his trousers when he stopped. "That Mr. Brown was a Western gentleman, it was thought," he said. "No one knew where he came from. He had £25 in his bag at the inn, and no clue where his home and people were. A white-haired man he was. I've often thought of his people far away, never knowing, though they'll have done sorrowing by now, poor souls." Another drink of water. Oh, it's hard to do all those accents. West Country accents are fun to do. I really enjoy doing them, but they are hard on the throat. That night, Kay had not been long asleep before he woke up to find the room brightly lit as before, although it was dark night outside. In the passages near his room there were whisperings and footsteps, as though people were pausing at his door to mutter some password. He sat up, expecting them to come in, but they passed on. When they had gone, he quietly opened his door an inch or two and peeped out. Some people in scarlet cloaks were just passing through a door at the end of the corridor, but one of them had paused. She was a young, very handsome witch with long earrings.
"Come along, sweet Belladonna,"
her companion said.
"we shall be late for our chapter." "Wait," Belladonna said. "I must just see what is in here." "No, come along. We must not keep Abner Brown waiting."
Saying this, the witch pulled Belladonna away, and in a moment the door closed behind them.
Whether it was the closing of the door or the sudden movement, Kay could not tell, but in the instant something fell onto the carpet from Belladonna's sleeve or pocket. Kay crept out to see what it was. It was a little red glass bottle with a cut glass stopper.
I expect it's her scent bottle, he thought.
He tried to open the door through which she had gone so that he could give it back to her, but the door was fast closed. And what was worse, the handle gave him pins and needles when he touched it. And another strange thing was that all this part of the house was unlit, while his own room was brighter than a summer day. The cuckoo clock inside the closed room cuckooed for 11 o'clock. When he was back in his room, he looked at the little glass bottle.
Witch's scent, he thought. I wonder what it smells like.
But it was not a scent. It was labeled like a physics bottle. Invisible mixture. Take 3 drops upon a lump of sugar. Night dose. 6 blank 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 day dose. Repeat dose if necessary. Excuse me.
I believe it's the stuff they take to make themselves invisible, he thought. I'll try it, and then I'll go out to the gamekeeper's cottage to see how they behave when they find that the hunters aren't at Coneycop Spinnery at all.
He had some old lumps of sugar put away under the carpet. Ew. He took out one of these and carefully opened the bottle. The mixture had a warm, rich smell, like the smell of green bracken on a very hot day.
I must be very careful of this, he thought.
He dropped 3 drops onto a lump, popped it into his mouth, and restoppered the vial. A glow went through him, as though he was sucking the loveliest peppermint ever made. He hid the vial in a mouse hole in the skirting board behind the valance, and then stood up. He felt a pepperminty feeling go tingling along his toes, and lo, he looked at his toes and could not see them, nor his legs, nor his pajamas, and though he looked at himself in the glass, he was not there. He was invisible.
I say, what fun, he said.
He put on his slippers and went down into the hall where a mouse was eating a crumb in the center of a patch of moonlight. The mouse did not see him, but went on grinding and nibbling at the crumb till it was finished. He pushed the chair against the garden door, clambered up it, drew the bolts, turned the key, undid the chain, took off the burglar alarm bell, and opened a way for himself. In a minute he was over the wall, and away to the pine wood out by Rye Meadows. It was thrilling to walk up to rabbits in the grassy places and to stroke them, while they thought that his touch was either a grass blade or the wind. An owl blundered right into him, bounced off, hovered, tried to make out what it was that it had hit, and then sheered off, much puzzled. At Peter's patch, the keeper's dogs came out barking at him, with the keeper after them.
What are Sol and Joe barking at?
His wife asked.
Sounds like a footstep to me, but there's no one here.
I expect it was only a rabbit.
Oh, them rabbits! Come in, dogs!
When they had gone into the cottage, Kay crept a little nearer. Some friends of Mr. Bilge's were there. Kay peeped in at the open door. In at the open door. The dogs snarled, and their hair stood on end with terror.
Quiet, dogs, will you?
Mr. Bilges said, kicking them in the ribs. Oh, that is cruel. I mean, now we know he really is a nasty man. Kicking a poor dog. Huh.
Now, We have a little drop of our nice spirit, which nobody knows about. He produced a bottle, some sugar, and a lemon, which his wife brought a kettle of hot water and a bowl. Then they began to brew a punch. Kay could see the keeper's friends. They were Brassy Cop and the Pimply Watto, as they were called, the two worst poachers and fighters in the district. The other was the young Bilges, who was footman to Sir Hassel-Gassel. Oh my goodness, the names in this! Oh. Sir Hassel-Gassel has to go on the list of silly names. They drank the punch when it was made. Then they began to boast. Need to make sure I got the noise.
It must be nearly time to move off to the spinnery, Brassy said. I heard the clock go 1.
They'll not be finished before 2 or 3, we hear, the keeper said. What I want to do is to come in among them with my good gun, just as they're packing up my rabbits. I'll soon settle their hunting.
Ah,
his brother said.
What I want is to get their rabbits and get the money for them. I reckon to get 4 times drunk out of what we get tonight.
Did I already do a voice for Watto? No, I didn't.
What I'm here for, Watto said, is to bang them black and blue with my knobby blackthorn.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, Brassy said, a few good binds on the heads with that, and they'll not poach so gamesome another time. But I've got my nice brass knuckle dusters. That's what I'll dust them with. Why, mercy me,
the keeper's wife said. I don't know where that accent came from.
If we haven't left the game bags down in the hall, whatever shall we bring their rabbits home in when we've beaten them?
Oh, the keeper said. Well, whatever shall we?
We shall want a big thing. There'll be 100 rabbits, they said. 100 rabbits, Brassy said. They'll kill and we'll eat and bite 'em into the bargain. But what shall we bring the rabbits home in? I don't know, except we each carry 20.
Oh, know what we can pack the rabbits in, the keeper cried. My old grandfather's sea trunk, or chest as he called it. That will hold the rabbits. I'll fetch it down. Kay heard him go upstairs. Soon he came down, trundling the chest after him. It was a big black wooden chest, bound with iron at the corners. It had the name R. Bilges painted in dirty white letters on the side. There were rope beckets or shackles curiously wrought instead of the usual handles to lift it by.
It might be your grandfather's coffin, Brassy said.
He was a seaman gunner, my grandfather was, the keeper said, and a fine old drunken boy he was. It's my belief he had something on his conscience. There's some of his things still in here. On opening the box to empty it, he pulled out some old bottles covered with wickerwork, an old leather knee boot, a patched pair of shoes from which the buckles had been cut, and some books. That's my old grandfather to the life, the keeper said. Just some empty bottles that you can't drink, and old leather that you can't wear. Into the woods with you. Kay had just time to slip aside before bottles, boots, and books were flung out past him into the wood. Oh my goodness, that is such a waste of a book. Come on. Oh, jeez. Come on. Now, Brassy, the keeper said, if you'll take that end, I'll take this, and we'll move off to the spinnery. We won't take the dogs.
Come on, then.
The three men moved off towards the spinnery.
Make an end of them all, my bilges,
the keeper's wife cried. Never you fear, the keeper answered.
beginning to sing. Okay, my dear scholars, you get another song from me. Excuse.
My name, it is Roper.
Gotta come up with a better tune than that. Oh my goodness.
My name, it is Roper and William.
Yeah, that's terrible. Oh my goodness. Let me come up with a tune first, my dear scholars, before I read this song. Otherwise, it just sounds awful. I'll say this, scholars, I might have to read this song instead of sing it because the lyrics to this are there's such a bizarre kind of mishmash. They don't quite work as a song.
My name, it is Roper and William, and I do intend for to kill 'em with my good gun and cartridge. I'll finish their partridge, for I'll shoot 'em and dead 'em and still 'em.
And that was an awful song. I'm sorry. That was terrible. I apologize. As they moved into the pine wood, Kay saw the black figure of Black Malkin step from the hedge to join them.
They'll be at work in the spinnery now, he said. You'll catch them just as they're packing up the spoils and planning what they'll do with them. Oh, what fun it will be to see their faces. But I say, keeper, what is that by the gates that your dogs are barking at?
The dogs had come out to bark at Kay, whom they could scent, but not see.
"I'll dog those dogs,"
the keeper said, turning back a little.
"Get you back into kennel, or I'll give you one. Keep the dogs in, don't let 'em make that outlandish row, as though a basket of wildcats was turned loose."
The keeper's wife called in the dogs and shut the door on them.
"Now, Black Malkin,"
Keeper said,
what are you gawping at there? Are you going to bark too?"
No,
Black Malkin said.
I suppose it is all right.
"Suppose what is all right?"
That path there, from your house to the woods.
"What could be wrong with it?"
Look at it," Black Malkin said. Did you see the twigs stir on the path just as though somebody trod on them?
"Can't you say that nobody trod on them?"
Yes, Black Malkin said. But they moved as though someone trod on them.
It was
the wind,
Brassy said. "Or a mouse running across."
I know when a mouse runs across, Black Malkin said. This wasn't a mouse.
"Well, then it was the shadow of a leaf or a moth or a bat."
It looked like a person's footstep.
"Well, there isn't a person, so it can't have been."
Look here, Pimply Watto said. How much more time are we going to waste? Nice fools will look if they're gone with the rabbits before ever we get there.
"Yes, come on," the keeper said. "You go in front, Black Malkin, and forget all about what you thought you saw."
They all moved off after this, growling at Black Malkin, who kept looking back suspiciously at where Kay stood. He had seen the earth and twigs displaced by Kay's feet. Kay saw him looking back until the party was so far downhill that he could look no more. When they were all out of sight, Kay looked at the things which the keeper had flung away. The bottles and leathers seemed useless to him, but he looked at the books with interest. They were, and I'm going to drink before I read them. Excuse me. Mother Shipton's Prophecies Explained. Zimmerman on Solitude. The Execrable Life and Death of Scarlet Blackbones, the Barbados Pirate. A Book to Reckon Tides. The Sea Gunner's Reckoner. Tom Maggot's 50 Merry Jests. The Sea Gunner's Practice. All of these books, except the last, were dirty, tattered, dog-eared pamphlets without covers. Kay left them where they lay, but took the Sea Gunner's Practice to look at it later. He did not think that this could be wrong, since the keeper had flung it away. He was not sure of the way to Connicop Spinnery. He went down the hill as the others had gone. The path led over a brook into the valley below 2 rolls of down. He went on till he came in sight of Connicop Hill, which there was no mistaking. A strip of wood in a bottom below the hill seemed likely to be the spinnery. It was a still moonlit night, with nothing stirring except himself. He could not see the keeper's party. He went cautiously. Soon he caught sight of Brassy Cop staring into the spinnery from behind a tree. Black Malkin was beside him. Connicop church clock, which was just beyond Connicop, struck 4. Kay marveled that the time had gone so quickly, but every instant had been lovely. Being out there alone in the moonlight, seeing everything, but not being seen. I will admit that actually does sound somewhat lovely. Suddenly, quite silently, 2 figures crept past him, peering at the spinnery. They were so intent on what they were doing that they never scented him. Both were very muddy and shaking with excitement. One was Nibbins, the other was Bitem.
"There's the keeper," Nibbins whispered. "He's got no dogs now. Hush!"
Kay saw the 2 bilges, followed by Pimply, come up to Brassy.
Not much good waiting any longer," the keeper growled. Here it is beginning to be light. Not a sign of any hunt, nor of any rabbit.
"I suppose they got the alarm and didn't come,"
Pimply said.
How could they have got the alarm? And here we've waited hours in the cold and have to drag that empty trunk back.
Where's the 100 rabbits you promised?"
Brassy asked.
Oh, 100 rabbits you if you ever ask that again, the keeper said. Of all the withering watches I've ever watched, this has been the witheringest and the watchingest. Here, you Black Malkin, if that's your name. Where's your friends that were to come, eh? Where are they?
"Well, they said they were going to come,"
Black Malkin said.
Oh, they said, did they? And on what you said we've suffered.
"Are you sure you didn't get the night run?"
Pimply asked.
I'll bet they said Friday next week, and he mistook it, Brassy said.
"No, I didn't mistake it."
Well,
if you didn't mistake it, where are they then?"
Young Bilges asked.
I don't know."
"Nor we don't know."
"Wait a minute," Pimply said. "Here's people coming. Perhaps it's them after all."
Kay saw a woman and a man coming hurriedly towards them.
"It's your wife, Bilges," Brassy said, "with that young artful arty."
Excuse me.
"Is that Bilges there?"
Mrs. Bilges asked. Oh my goodness, there are so many voices here.
Yes, I'm here. Of course I'm here. What is it?
It's about Brady Ridewood, Bilges. Here's Artful just come from there. While you've been watching here, that Bitem and his friends have cleaned out all the rabbits from the whole South Wallen.
Not a skunk left, what, in the whole boiling, Artie said. They've been and cleaned out South Warren? Yes. That's why they never came here then. The whole thing was a blind to bring us here, so that they could hunt in peace.
Seems like it.
How many rabbits would there be in South Warren?
150, if there was one.
You've been made a fool of, Bilges. Yes, Bilges said. I've been made a fool of. We've all been made fools of. And the sneaking, prying black milking that told us all the story is the one that made us the fools. Don't you try to sneak away, you black sneaking snake, for I've got you by the scruff.
I didn't make you a fool. I told you the truth. Oh, please let me go. You're almost choking me,
Black Malkin said. I've got a very good mind to quite choke you. You in the plot with them. You know they were going to Brady Ride Fort Wood.
Please, sir, I did, sir.
Yes, you did, Pimply said.
Don't you dare deny it.
Of course he knew it.
And we gave you milk and the bit of sardine,
Mrs. Bilges said. I'm trying to find where I'm... Yeah, okay.
Oh, please, ma'am, they disagreed, ma'am. Indeed they disagreed.
Yes, and we're going to disagree, Bilges said, swinging him up by the scruff. He's led us all here for the whole night, and his friends have robbed our rabbits. I vote we fling him into Soul's Pig's Pond.
Yes, with a stone round his neck. Oh, no, please, not into a pond. I shall catch my death. I can't stand water. Indeed I can't.
Who's gonna put you into water to poison what's good drink? When mixed with gin. Now, Sue's Pig Pond is mud, and mud is what you're fittest for. Take his tail, Pimply, and twist it if he tries to escape. Oh my goodness, these are awful people, my dear scholars. Awful people. Okay, I'm just trying to find a good point for where we can stop. Sorry. 1,020,000, they sure are. They really are. Kay saw them carry Black Malkin away down the hill. He followed them at a little distance to see what they would do. Not very far from the end of the spinnery was a big shallow pan fed by a spring, and full of water in the winter, but now full of soft pale mud, in which Farmer Fattingham's pigs loved to wallow as a protection against the flies. It was a most filthy and messy place. Densulia, welcome, Densulia, welcome. We are just finishing up the midnight folk for the evening. I just need to get to a good stopping area. At the brink of this hollow, the party paused. "Now, Black Malkin," the keeper said, "this is Souse Pig Pond, and as you're a dirty little pig, you're gonna souse in it. Once for snaking, and once for squeaking, and once for telling us lies. Oh." As he sang these lines, he swung Black Malkin round his head and pitched him, swoosh, into the mud. They all laughed at him and mocked him as he tried to clamber out. "There, now we'll go home," the keeper said. "Another time perhaps he'll be careful who he tries to make an April fool of." The party moved off for home in a very bad temper. Kay heard them growl as they passed. "We've got to drag that sea chest up the hill.
And all those rabbits which we could have got sixpence apiece for, let alone the soup and the skins.
If I'd shot the Black Malkin with my good gun, I'd only have given him some of what he deserved," etc., etc. Kay saw Nibbins and Bitem peering from behind the hedge, both of them shaking with laughter. When the keeper's party had passed out of sight,
Nibbins and Bitem hopped over the hedge to the brink of the pond. Kay heard them call out.
I say, how on earth? Here, there's someone in the mud.
Oh, that's Nibbins. Sorry, my mistake.
I say,
I'm trying to remember Nibbins' voice.
I say, how on earth? Here, there's someone in the mud. Get a stick quick. Here, give us a paw. Stick out your brush, Bitem. Poor fellow is pretty nearly smothered. Catch hell now. Pull now, Bitem. Pull, he's coming. I say, he's nearly stuck past saving. Heave together now. Here he comes.
Why, if it isn't poor old Black Malkin. Well, Black Malkin, whatever brings you here?
Whatever brings you here?
Black Malkin growled.
This is a pretty sort of time to come hunting, just as it's getting light. You're nice people to arrange to go hunting with. I turned up according to the plan. Keeper catches me and sauces me in the mud. You two silly asses go gallivanting somewhere and turn up grinning. I was too late to do anything. Oh, for pity's sake, stop grinning in that insane way. It's nothing to laugh at, that I can see. No, we're really very so sorry,
Bitem said.
but we'd better be off to our beds. It's too late to do any hunting now. Perhaps at least you'll explain where you two grinning idiots have been passing the night. Well, I've been waiting for you.
Oh, we got to do a bit of fun out Bratty Ridewood way, Bitem said, and the time slipped away just like magic. We'd no idea it was so late. But we mustn't keep you talking here, old man. You'll be taking cold.
Yes, Nibbins said. You must hop off home, old man. Have a good rub in the bracken shed. Nothing like bracken for mud. Then have a good stiff bowl of hot milk, with a sardine to it, if you can get one.
With that, they set off to their homes. I'm going to stop at that point. It's a good stop-off point. Oh my goodness. Well, I actually found that part getting pretty magical, isn't it? It is, again, the thing with the Midnight Folk is it does feel very dreamy. Like, not like a fever dream, but it's the sense of magic in it is less like, how do I put this? It's a very subtle use of magic in the tale. Julian 20 is so different from Box. It is somewhat different from Box of Delights, but I will actually argue against that because Box of Delights does continue this whole dreamy magic feel to it. Like just beyond what we know, there is this magical world, and there's this subtle magic that exists that we just never really focus on. You can definitely tell Kay is younger in this book. I mean, he's mispronouncing words, misspelling words. This chapter, it's pretty interesting. I found the bit with Grandpa Harker. It kind of went on a bit. I know it's exposition, but it did seem a little bit long and could have been broken up a little bit better. But I'm really enjoying it. I hope you've been enjoying it too, my dear scholars. So, about the rest of next week. If everything goes according to plan, and everyone stays healthy and everything works out, on Sunday, I will be reading the second to last chapter of A Christmas Carol. And then, this will be extra special, my dear scholars. The following day, the Monday after, which is Christmas, I'm sure, I will be reading the final short chapter of A Christmas Carol. So you will get 2 streams right next to each other, back to back. I'm really looking forward to it. I really can't wait to do it. It's going to be excellent, exciting. It'll be a lot of fun. But I can feel my voice giving out. There was so many voices in that chapter. So many different ones you have to handle, so many different conversations. So let's see if there is anyone we can raid this fine evening. Okay, let's see. Okay. You know what? Funny that I would say that. Drazov the Wicked is reading A Christmas Carol and Winter Solstice. Let's visit Drazov. It's been a while. So, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet each other again in the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye bye.